I'd like to share a little bit more about why I'm passionate about getting the next generation ready for influence by helping them be ready to speak and getting their coaches and teachers and parents and mentors ready to help them get ready to speak. There's never been a more important time for us to be as Christians, as Jesus followers, ready to share messages of hope and love and peace and truth. So, in this process, if you've been following along, I've been sharing a series of biblical accounts that I believe illustrate this idea of being ready to speak by people that we can see in Scripture. So, we talked about Timothy, we've talked about Moses, we've talked about Esther. Today, I would like to talk about Paul. And I'd like to talk about this aspect of being ready to speak, that people who are ready to speak are, in fact, cultural communicators. This is the Institute for Cultural Communicators, and people often ask me, to explain that. And this is what I generally say. Being a cultural communicator is not communicating like the culture. You don't have to have training to do that. It's being empowered to communicate with the culture. We see a perfect example of this when Paul, on his missionary travels, finds himself in Athens. And at the time, Athens was known, one of the things Athens was known for was kind of collecting philosophers. And so philosophers would come to Athens and they would spend their time talking about the latest ideologies, kind of the latest fads in ideologies about life and worldviews. Does that sound familiar at all? There's so much of that today. They're just ideologies, right? Here's the latest fad coming through, and we'll chase that one. And again, what a time for us to be able to communicate hope and truth in a culture that is often so confused and pulled in so many directions. And so Paul finds himself here in Athens in the middle of all of this philosophical debate going on, and Paul starts talking about Jesus. And actually, you can read this in the book of Acts. They start murmuring and talking amongst themselves and saying, who is this babbler? Like, this guy doesn't make any sense at all to us. So initially, Paul's communication wasn't getting through. And so they take Paul to the Areopagus, which is, we might think of the town center or a place around the courthouse. And so they take Paul there where they like to have these important discussions on philosophical topics. And when Paul gets there, you can look at this in Acts chapter 17. This is what he says to them. Men of Athens, I see that you are very religious in all respects. For while I was passing through and examining the objects of your worship, I also found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. What is Paul doing? Paul is taking the symbols and the icons that they are familiar with, and he is using their spirituality, their form of worship, their religiosity to bring them to the unknown God. And he goes on and he says, I know this God, and I can introduce you to him. I know Jesus, and I can introduce you to him. Wouldn't it be incredible if the next generation of Christians could do that? Wouldn't it be incredible if they had real influence in today's culture because they knew how to be cultural communicators, because they knew how to recognize the icons of our culture, what people are striving for but missing, and talk about it in terms that people can understand, that are relatable, that are relevant. Being ready to speak is being a cultural communicator. This is a great example of it. If you need help empowering the next generation Christians in your life, check out a Communicators for Christ conference. Check out some of the resources and tools we have on the website. We're going to do just that. We're going to help you have the tools and resources you need to coach next generation Christians to be ready to speak.